Alright, today is the day I've been dreading for a long time, the rocker seals. This can be a really bad leak point on these engines. I'll show you guys how this works. So in here you can see there's the camshaft down in there, and these are the rockers which rock back and forth on these bushings and push the valves in and out, intake and exhaust. What happens is these rocker shafts, if they're not seated correctly, or the bores right here have some damage, the oil can leak past and it'll just come right out of the bottom of your engine, cause smoke, whole bunch of stuff. So what I'm gonna be doing is installing RSR seals, which go in those grooves. I'll show you how the rocker shaft works next. So this is a rocker shaft and it has a couple parts. It has two of these collars and a bolt, and then the shaft itself. When you take these out, make sure they don't have any damage. These all look pretty good. I don't know. I'm just going by what I can feel with my fingernail. It feels smooth. The way these things work though is that you can see this one has a circular hole in it, and this one has some threads and an Allen. And when you put these in those bores, by tightening this bolt, you don't ever want to tighten this side. By tightening this bolt, these wedges get driven into here and makes the edges expand into the bore. The reason you don't ever want to spin it from this side is that it can rotate the whole thing, and that can again damage your bores. So you always want to tighten from this side. A lot of oil leaks can happen from the rocker shafts. Obviously they were happening on this engine, which is why someone goobered red silicone all over them. So the first step is I have to take all the silicone off. So that'll be really fun. Let's do it. Ugh, come on. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Unfortunately, there's still more in there, packed into the Allen head and on the rocker. Wow, there's a hair in that one. That's cool. Okay, so I got this as clean as I could for now. And this is just one side of the engine, but when I did pull this engine, it was making a ticking noise, and it was coming from this side of the engine. Kind of sounded like it was from this corner. And what I found was that this rocker shaft was backing out. So you can see how it's hanging out like that. It should look like that, or like any of the rest of these. But this one was coming out, so I did order a new rocker shaft. I'm assuming that one is junk. We will see. So I have a 5mm Allen and an 8mm socket head, and I don't know how that's supposed to work, because there's no way that's fitting in there. The book lies. Anyway, what it said was that you're supposed to hold the 8mm side steady and then loosen the 5mm side. So we'll see how that works. Alright, I seem to have made an error because the oil cooler is now in the way. So I'm going to remove the oil cooler. Alright, so here's our first rocker shaft. You can see these grooves here. That's where these RSR seals are going to go. Okay, so what happened last night was I spent over 2 hours cleaning this thing with brake clean in an enclosed environment, and all those fumes really messed with my brain a little bit. I think we're gonna do a little better tonight, but what I do wanna say is I need to put this crank pulley back on so I can rotate the engine, so I can take the tension off from the rockers, and that'll help me get the rocker shaft out a lot easier. What I was trying to do was adjust the valve clearance using the rocker to try to take tension off the rocker, and I was having trouble getting things out of the head, so yeah, or rocker tower, whatever. Point is, no more brake clean fumes, and we're gonna try to crush these RSR seals right now. So I haven't put the pulley on yet to rotate the engine to get the tension off this rocker, but the big issue is I can't even loosen it yet. This is an 8mm Allen over here, and you can see that my socket is too long, and so is my Allen key. It's too big. So instead of wrecking my nice ball end Allens, I bought a cheap set of Allens here, and we're going to go modify them with the bandsaw and the grinder. All right, let's see if it fits. Oh yeah. All right, we're in business. All right. So the rocker seals that I'm putting in, they're pretty weird O-rings. They're kind of flat. They're not circular in profile from like a cross section. And so we're gonna slip those in there, and we are going to lubricate them with some silicone grease. I just have some dielectric grease, whatever, same thing. And we're gonna put that in fairly dry, other than the grease on there, and then lubricate the rockers. So that's gonna be my approach. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. Some people say put it in dry and lubricate. Some people say cover it with assembly lube and slide it in. I don't know. I think that you should grease the seals a little bit, because otherwise they have a tendency to shear off, and I don't want that to happen. So, all right, let's do it. So it's right now that I realize there's an inside and an outside to these seals. If you look at the way they're molded, they have a radiused edge on the outside and more of a square shape or square edge on the inside. This seal is installed correctly because you can see it has that rounded edge. This one I actually installed the wrong way, so I gotta pull this one out and flip it over somehow. So what I think is working pretty well for me is I'm holding onto the seal and not letting it twist in my fingertips. That way I know that this is the outside. Then what I do is I put my thumb here, I stretch it over, and it's gonna go in the wrong way, but that's okay, because then what I do is I just pull and wiggle this around, and because I'm holding onto it the right way, it just slips right into the slot. So that was a lot easier than what I was doing before. Now what I'm going to want to do is just put a little bit of this silicone grease on these O-rings. Alright, so those are all ready to be reinstalled. What I'm going to do now is just make sure those bores are really clean. So the last rocker shaft I took out was cylinder number 4, so that's the one I'm going to start with. But what you want to notice is that, see how this is thicker right here than that? Wherever it's thin, you want this rocker shaft flush with the thin side. So it's going to be flush on the left side of all these openings. And you want to install these without any hardware. There we go. All right, so now that I have it in here, I'm actually going to push it back out. Ooh, okay, and I believe this is the one. Yeah, okay. I want to make sure I don't get these mixed up. Now I'm going to take this rocker and I'm going to put some assembly lube right here and here, just so that this stays nice and lubricated when we first fire this thing up. And you know what? Maybe we can put a little in here too. I don't know. All right, now we just need to jam her in there. I'm just gonna wiggle this. Oh, there we go. It's now through the rocker. I can no longer remove the rocker, but now it's binding up a little bit. Almost there. A little bit more to go. And I'm gonna leave it about there for a second. I'm gonna go get the hardware and then see where it lies on this side. So the other thing we want to do is the bolt side always needs to face towards the inside somewhere, because what you don't want is a situation where the bolt is captured. So if this rocker shaft were to walk out a little bit once the engine was in the car, if this was on this side, there'd be no way to really pull this out. So I'm going to try to put it in from this side, like so. Alright, so I don't know if you can see, but we're not quite flush, so I'm going to push it over a little bit more. That looks pretty flush. I'm going to take the custom shortened Allen key here. Looks like it's no longer flush. I must have pushed it in a little bit with this Allen key. Because now that I have the hardware in, it doesn't want to slide anywhere, of course. So we'll take these back out. So this shaft just needs to move a little bit more that way. I think what I'm going to do is put a socket on this and just push on it. I'm using a socket on some extensions. Just tap that over a little bit. You want to be able to really see pretty much the edge of that rocker shaft. About like so. And that means that those seals are just outside of the rocker itself. As you can see, the end of the rocker shaft is pretty much flush here, and then it's sticking inward on the thicker side. Alright, so I'm just going to tension all these so they don't walk around, and I'm going to torque them later. That's going to be a whole nother thing we're going to get into. Okay, so in the book it says to always put these shafts in from the thinner side, but in this case I can't get to it from the thinner side to push on it, so I'm doing the opposite of what the book says. I don't see how else I can make it happen. The other thing I need to do is I need to keep rotating the engine to make sure the cam lobes aren't pushing up on the rockers. So what you want to do is just come over and look at the cam. And right now, this cam is sticking up, pushing up against that rocker. We're gonna rotate the engine a little bit until it doesn't do that anymore. So now the bumpy part of the cab is, rotated out of the way, and there should be no pressure pushing up on this rocker arm while I put in this shaft. Man, we're just hitting a wall. I don't understand why it's not going that last amount. All right, I had to take it all the way back out. I could not get this thing to come into the thin section. So I'm gonna try to do what the book suggests, which is drive it in from the thin side. The problem is I don't have access over here. So we'll see how it goes. This really shouldn't matter at all. Man, this thing is just like super tight though, and I don't understand why. It seems like the RSR seals are just so much bigger than the diameter of the bore. When I drove it in this way, I noticed that I sheared a little bit of the seal off. You can see it here. So I mean, this is super precise stuff. Maybe I should have been putting these in the freezer or something to shrink them a little bit, but they're proving to be quite difficult, and I have a lot more to go, so really want to figure out how to do this more quickly. So this thing is so tight in here that there's no way I'm going to be able to drive this thing in correctly without using this side. So I don't know what I'm going to do here yet. It has to go in this way because then I can tap it in to get it even. But when this thing is this tight and doesn't want to move, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do here. It doesn't want to move because of that seal. It's just really in there. It's harder than the other ones. I can try it. I really don't think this is gonna work. All right, I'm aborting again. It's going in the other way. It has to, because this is just way too tight. It's impossible. Again, I'm not seeing anything on this leading edge that would cause a problem. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just try driving it in without the rocker, and then that way I can get it lined up, make sure it's going in okay, and then I'll try to back it out or go all the way through just to make sure it's seating correctly. So this should just go right through. And if it doesn't, I'm gonna figure out why it doesn't. Look at that, it's going right in. All right, this time we're not going in dry because it's being difficult. Whenever it's difficult and it's totally dry, adding more lubrication is always the answer. Hard part. Oh, looks like it's going this time. Oh yeah. All right. So we're just gonna watch here, wait for that to get flush. All right, wow, that was that did not go smoothly. So I have 9 more to do. Let's hope they go a lot better than that did, because that took forever. I do think the lube is definitely necessary. If you can install these things dry, good for you. But there's no way it would have worked. Once I lubed these 2 up, they went right in. So yeah, let's get the rest of them in. All right, so I just found something else rad. This bolt right here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's mangled. So what I'm gonna try to do is drive a Torx into it and remove it with a Torx, because there's no way a regular Allen is fitting into that anymore. So that's awesome. All right, so half the rocker shafts are installed with the RSR seals. I will say the bottom went a lot more smoothly once I discovered that everything is better with lube. What I am gonna do is this one I just put in here temporarily. This is the one that had that Super Gnar bolt head. So I'm gonna order a new bolt for this one, but I did install it just to keep the rocker on there. Now it's time to do the other side, and hopefully it'll go a lot smoother now that I'm lubing everything. All right, so now that I sort of know what I'm doing, I want to show you guys how whoever worked on this thing didn't know what they were doing. So like we looked at the other side, when you put that rocker shaft in, you always want it flush with the thin section. So this is the thin section. Does it look flush? No, it is not. It's flush with the fat section, which means the whole rocker shaft is shifted over here, and that slot might be right here, which might be allowing all the oil to just come right out. I don't know. This thing is just not assembled correctly. All these rocker shafts need to be shifted this way, and then this one was so loose that it just walked out. So on top of that, this bolt looks mangled too, so I'm gonna have to try to use a Torx on this one as well. But in order to do that, I need to take out these 2. So again, this one's under tension. You can just see with the cam lobe, so I'm just gonna rotate the engine a little bit. It's always weird when it's making air noises. I feel like it's breathing. And then this one again has to come out on this side. So what I'm gonna try and do is use a socket and small piece of wood, maybe. There we go. You know, for being installed incorrectly, it doesn't look too bad. All right, so that's it. All the rocker shafts are installed. Now, if you were paying attention, I did not put the through bolts on these last few. That is because a bunch of these bolts, I don't know if you can see that, are super mangled. So 4 of them were messed up enough to the point where I couldn't get a 5mm Allen in them. And then I was reading that you probably want to replace all these. These are torque to yield bolts, and the original factory spec said you should tighten them to 13 foot-pounds. And that was when the bores of these cam towers were all new. But over time, I mean, these things have been rebuilt probably a couple times by now. Those bores can get out of spec. And so if you do 13 foot-pounds, they're probably gonna walk out and fall out in your valve cover while you're driving. So what I've heard is you can do 18, even 20 foot-pounds, and just really crank them in there. And then they won't move around on you. So that's what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna get all new bolts. The other thing that I learned was, I was looking at these rocker shafts. Some of them looked more gold, some of them looked like they had more visible wear, but I couldn't feel any ridges with my fingernails, so I wasn't really too careful about how I installed them. Now, if yours do have wear and there is a ridge that you can feel on your fingernail, that technically means that that side is worn out. But if you put it in the other direction and you flip it 180 from where the wear is, you can use it again. So if you think about it, this is the pivot, right? And there's a big spring right here, or right here, pushing up. So the wear is all going to be towards the engine. You have this side riding on the cam and this side on a spring. It's going to want to pull the rocker this way, so the wear on that rocker shaft is going to be on the inside. If you just rotate it and you put all the wear on the outside, you should be able to theoretically use all those rocker shafts again. All right, that about wraps up the RSR rocker shaft seal installation. Let me know if you have any questions. Next episode, I should be having all my powder coated parts back. Pretty excited about that, so stay tuned and thanks for watching.